And I think I'm the new vice chair, yes?
You are. Can you just take a second and maybe talk a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'm one of the 3 Davis County commissioners. I just started my second 4-year term in January, re-elected. I have been a fan of Wasatch Front Regional Council. I'm not making this up. They know it is true. Ever since I was a new planning commissioner in my city of Kaysville in January of 2014, I started to learn a lot from Wasatch Front Regional Council. So I'm really excited to be part of this committee. I'm new to this committee, but I've been on the board representing all counties for 4 years. So just really happy to learn from this group and serve. And I'm a big active transportation person too. So there's that.
I like it. Thank you. We appreciate you joining us and definitely excited. The fact is you're the vice chair, so thank you much. Hey, you know what? I'm going to step out of the agenda just for a second and just kind of talk something. I'm going to make both Ted and Andrew a little nervous, but if I can, let me provide a quote that kind of sets the tone, I think, of any important meeting, and particularly a meeting that we're dealing with today. It comes by way of a gentleman that most of you probably don't remember. His name was Danny Thomas. And Danny Thomas, I hate to date myself, but the fact of the matter is in his day, and certainly in my young years, he made some interesting moves as not only an actor, but he's also the founder of the St. Jude Children's Hospital. But he made this quote, and I'd like to read that to you if you don't mind. Success in life has nothing to do with wanting to gain what you gain in life or accomplish for yourself. It's what you do for others. And I think that's a powerful comment in terms of what we're attempting to try to do for so many people in our communities. And so let's see if we can't today do some great things for others. So with that, what I'd like to do, if we can, I'd like to start, and we'll just do some introductions around the table. And then with those introductions, we'll have Andrea, if she'll go ahead and introduce and identify the ones we have online. So let's begin at the top, please.
Rosie Hernandez with Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Thank you.
Jordan Chandler with Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Mike Sopchak, Communications Manager at WFRC.
Jennifer Elskin, Federal Highway Administration.
Carlton Christensen with Utah Transit Authority.
Lauren Palmer, Mayor in Harriman.
Brennan Stanger, Clinton City Mayor, and new to your guys' board this year, so thank you.
Brian Horrocks, North Salt Lake Mayor.
Andrea Pearson, WFRC.
I'm Andrew Gruber, Executive Director here at WFRC, and welcome.
Bob Dandoy, please. Ted.
Good morning. I'm Ted Knowlton. I'm the Deputy Director here at Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Jenny Wilson, Salt Lake County Mayor.
Good morning, Beth Holbrook, Utah Transit Authority.
Jim Harvey, Weber County Commission.
Dave Alvord, Salt Lake County. Ben Hewitt, UDOT Program Development.
Harry Newell, UDOT Deputy Director.
Bert Granberg with the WFRC Analytics Group.
Jory Johnner, Wasatch Front Long Range Plan Group.
Michaela Jordan, WFRC. Megan Townsend, CED Director, WFRC.
Marsha White, Economic Development, WFRC.
Russ Fox with the UTA.
Bob Stevenson, Davis County.
Nikki Navia, WFRC. Chrissy Dahlberg, WFRC Community and Economic Development.
Lauren Victor, WFRC.
Julie Bjornsted, WFRC staff. We told Commissioner to sit at the table, Andrew, and he doesn't want to go sit up there.
Bob, I showered this morning, I promise.
Van Wagenen, WFRC Bike Ped.
Perfect.
Marion Florence, WFRC Finance.
Byron Head, WFRC CED.
Wayne Benyon, WFRC Short Range Planning.
Okay, I think we got everybody in the room. Andrea, if you can help us with those who are online.
Sure. We have Reed Ewing, Lorraine Kamalu, Mike Newton, Ted Knowlton, Sharon Bolos, Natalie Hall, Ryan Beck, Andrew Gruber, Monica Zoltansky, Kendall Thomas, Jordan Chandler, Mike Sobchak, Bridget Mendel, Nicole Bordeaux, Ivan Marrero, Allison Stroud, Don Ramsey.
Just for the record, we have Mayor Zoltansky +1.
Okay. I'd like to, if I can, just take a brief second and introduce the new members to the Regional Growth Committee. And so we do have Salt Lake County Councilman Dave Albert. Please take it a second, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, thank you. I've been on the Salt Lake County Council for about 2 years now. I represent District 2, which is, if you kind of picture Bangerter Highway, it's everything west of Bangerter with a few little exceptions. I previously served as mayor of South Jordan City in 2014 to 2018, but happy to be with this group. Appreciate you all.
Appreciate it, Dave. Thank you. Okay. We have Weber County Commissioner Sharon Bolos. I think she's online. Sharon,
I am. Thanks, Mayor.
please just talk to us a little bit about Sharon, a little bit about you, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, I'm a newly elected commissioner here in Weber County. I'm in my 3rd month, so I know everything at this point. Kidding. I served 2 terms as the mayor of West Haven, so I work closely with Mayor Dan Doy and have a great relationship with him. And I have a lot of great experiences with WFRC in my role as the mayor, and I'm really looking forward to serving on this board.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon. Also, we have Brandon Stanger. Okay, Clinton Mayor, please talk a little bit about you. There you go.
Just glad to be here. Started as mayor during the last election, I guess, a year and a half ago, and really happy that I don't have to campaign for anything this go around. We do have 3 of our council people up for election. So if you know anybody in Clinton looking to serve, give me their name and number. But love just all the opportunities we get to serve on various boards. I really like the WFRC just because it's so great seeing we're thinking 20, 30, 40, and even 50 years out ahead. And I just think what a great state we live in to be able to come and collaborate with everybody across the table, which I think a lot of places don't have that. So thank you for the opportunity to help and serve.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, and we have alternate Sandy City Councilwoman Allison Stroud. Is she online, I believe? Would you take us a second?
Yes, sir. That's
Thank
I
you,
and
Allison.
I am online. Thank you. My name is Allison Stroud. I'm a Sandy City Council member. This is my 3rd year serving on the council and looking forward to collaborating with more of a regional group of people to make our area better.
Like that.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
being here. Thank you.
Okay. Well, welcome one and all. We do appreciate you joining us. Obviously, we got some important things we'd like to talk about today. We want to start with some minutes to the Regional Growth Committee meeting held on January 19th, 2023. So we have 1 action items. Are there any corrections, any comments at this moment to the RGC meeting minutes held on January 19th? Okay, hearing none, then do I have a motion then to approve? Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. We do now and walk into a public comment period. We certainly would welcome any comments that one might have relative to this meeting and this committee. So if you have a comment, please step up to the mic and just give us your name. And if you're affiliated with an organization, share with the organization. Any public comments today? Okay, hearing none and seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the overview of the Regional Growth Committee. Okay, the Regional Growth Committee serves as a policy advisory body to the Wasatch Regional Council regarding long-range transportation planning, land use, and other growth-related issues. This is our first meeting, okay, with new members, and it's a great time to spend a few minutes on our role. Ted Knowlton is the Wasatch Front Regional Council's Deputy Director and the Regional Growth Committee Staff Coordinator, and he will discuss then with us these items. Ted?
Thanks, Mayor Dandoy. And hey, it's great to be here with all of you and to welcome new members. It's really exciting. This is really brief, but hopefully in a couple of minutes, you'll have a little bit better of a sense of the role of the Regional Growth Committee within the work, our shared work of creating a great region and the work of Wasatch Front Regional Council. I'll start with just a simplified, hopefully, chart that shows the relationship of Regional Growth Committee, which you see on the right, this box. I should have an extension for my hand that touches the screen, and how it relates to our namesake board, the Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is of course largely composed of mayors and county elected officials. So the Regional Growth Committee is one of two major committees that makes recommendations to the council. The other being the Transportation Coordinating Committee, TransCom. The difference is Regional Growth Committee focuses on long-range planning issues. I'll unpack that a little bit. Whereas Transportation Coordinating Committee, short-range planning and programming, assigning dollars to projects. If you look at the Regional Growth Committee and the lines that lead into it, if you work for a local government, your local planner is engaged in our Regional Growth Committee technical advisory committees. They vet things for our consideration as Regional Growth Committee. Ideas come from them for agenda items for Regional Growth Committee. There's two of those, one in the Salt Lake Valley and one in the Ogden-Layton metro area, which includes Southern Box Elder as well. And then you see the line from the Active Transportation Committee over to Regional Growth Committee. The Active Transportation Committee is a little interesting because it serves Utah County and as a broader group that looks at active transportation. So those are the lines feeding into Regional Growth Committee. And then again, Regional Growth Committee makes recommendations to the council. You can think of a key role for the Regional Growth Committee is guiding the process of formulating the Wasatch Choice Vision. You're going to hear a lot about the Wasatch Choice Vision if you haven't already, but this is, think of it as the place where we coordinate the long-range plans for local governments, transportation providers, and economic development decision makers as well. So those are those three columns that you see there: economic development, land use, and transportation. And part of this process then of looking at that is also thinking about, well, how do our collaborative actions help improve quality of life based on these goals? These goals that you're looking at here have been adopted by the WFRC Council. And I won't do a dramatic reading of them, but as you look at them, I think you'll see, oh, this covers a lot of the bases of how the built environment affects quality of life. So put a different way, the subject matter of the Regional Growth Committee is broad. And it just relates to all the interesting ways that, again, our built environment affects our quality of life. So as you think about, where we go as a committee, how we guide the process of developing the next Wasatch Front, Wasatch Choice Vision, hopefully that gives you just a little bit of contours. Now, the last thing I'll say is that many of you know that we work on a cycle of 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, we update the Wasatch Choice Vision, we adopt the Regional Transportation Plan. That is scheduled to happen in May. So if you're a new member, it's going to feel a little bit interesting to be coming in at the tail end of a process. But the exciting thing is, starting in August, we will together take a look at where do we go from here in the next cycle. And I think that will be a really interesting and fascinating time to be a member of the Regional Growth Committee. Mayor, that's all I have in terms of just high level thoughts and kind of orientation to the role of the Regional Growth Committee.
Perfect. Thank you, Ted. please.
Right now, our vision is working off of our last RTP, correct? So once we, as a body, adopt a new RTP, the vision will be adjusted. Am I right about that process, or is the vision adjusted over time?
I think it's both. We can adjust the vision over time. And at the same time that we adopt the regional transportation plan, we also refresh an adoption of the vision. Yeah.
That help you? Perfect. Thank you, Ted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we do have number 4. This is an information only discussion. We're going to talk about the legislative grants and updates, specifically Safe Streets for All and Utah Trail Network. Today, we will be hearing an update on the transportation-related legislative session outcomes and talk about 2 significant grant opportunities. It was a historic session, especially with regards to transportation funding. To get us started, I'll first turn to Andrew Grober, who will give us some highlights on what happened during that session. After that, we will hear from the UDOT about the Utah Trails Network, which I have a vested interest in hearing about that and what it might all bring about. And then we'll discuss the Safe Streets and Roads that are planning grant and the submission of the grants to improve first and last mile connections to transit and these centers. So with that, Andrew, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dandoy. It was a notable legislative session for transportation and other growth-related issues. And I'm going to give a quick overview of this. I would say that Miranda Jones-Cox would be doing this today, but she's taking a well-deserved vacation this week. So I'm filling in for Miranda. We all know that the session, 45-day session, and I'll just say for those of you that are very involved legislatively, and many of you here are, it is good. It's intense 45 days, and it's good that it's only 45 days. We should be thankful. It's not that way everywhere. A record number of bills passed, 575 bills, and a record level budget as the economy and the revenues coming into the state have been going gangbusters. On what I want to do today is briefly talk first about funding and appropriations, and then about key pieces of legislation. You see, there were so many bills passed, a lot of bills listed on the screen. Rest assured, I am not going to talk in detail about all of those. However, we do have a detailed legislative summary that we developed. We're going to drop it in the chat, and there's details there so you can take a look at that and, of course, ask any of us questions. Okay, let's start with funding and appropriations. Before we actually talk about what the legislature did on investments, infrastructure investments, we really should start with the principles. Some of you may remember over the past few years, all of the state's transportation agencies, the metropolitan planning organizations, UDOT, UTA, the League of Cities and Towns, the Association of Counties, work together to develop these shared principles for infrastructure investment. First, just that we should be investing in infrastructure, as we're the fastest growing state in the nation over the past 10 years. And one of the ways that we can make sure that we address and maintain good quality of life is to have good infrastructure. Second, we have to support multimodal transportation choices. And you don't just need to listen to us at the MPO about this, but even the folks at UDOT would say, and have been saying for years, that we cannot address the transportation demands that we have coming in Utah simply through building more roadway capacity. We do need to build roadway capacity at the state and local level, but also we must have a really great transit system, and we need opportunities for people to use active transportation, biking and walking as a means of transportation. We need to do all of those things. Third, utilize the professional planning and prioritization process. Much of that work that happens through the metropolitan planning organizations, through UDOT, through UTA, where we, rather than, and I don't mean this as a pejorative term, but rather than a political process, we utilize a professional planning process to identify what the highest priorities are. And those are embodied then reflected in Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. And then finally, being fiscally prudent, which involves, for example, not incurring debt unnecessarily, not incurring ongoing obligations that the state doesn't have the resources or our local governments don't have the resources to cover. Those priorities, and I would say that this session notably advanced and adhered to all of those principles. So on funding, here's some of the pieces that came out of this. One, really not talked about very much, but it's very significant, is $800 million set aside for debt repayment for existing bonds that UDOT is the issued for UDOT roads by the state. Now, this means that money is set aside to pay for debt service for roughly 3 years for outstanding bonds, not prepay, but just make the as scheduled payments, which means that UDOT, rather than using their existing flow of revenue for debt service, they can use that for projects, which helps to address the inflationary impacts and cost impacts on projects so that they can maintain and perhaps even accelerate the program that's in place right now, which is really important for predictability and stability as we look ahead to the future. Second is active transportation, $45 million one time, and then for the first time ever, ongoing funding for active transportation. And we're going to get into that when we talk about the bill that set this up. And then I'm going to put Terry on the spot and ask her to talk about that a little bit, but it's super exciting. Third, additional funding for commuter rail, $200 million for, which is about half the cost needed to do a new station at Point of the Mountain and associated double tracking in that area. Notably, this is in addition to the funding that has already been identified and provided for strategic double tracking. And as many of you know already, just the other day, last week, the president included in his budget funding about $500 million, which is close to what the shared ask that we as Utahns had, included $500 million for strategic double tracking of Frontrunner. So when added to the funding that the state has already put in, that UTA is committed, that gets us roughly to the $1 billion needed for that highest priority project in our region to make Frontrunner more reliable, higher frequency, the possibility of express trains, to make that spine of the transit system for the whole region function really well, which, when it coincides with all of the work that we've all done and many of your communities have done around the Frontrunner stations, the development of housing and jobs around the Frontrunner stations will help our region to thrive and absorb growth that we have coming. And Ted was noting the Wasatch Choice Vision. That's what we're talking about now, that north-south spine with Frontrunner and I-15 and the development around those Frontrunner stations is one of the key strategies for us as a region, as a state, to absorb growth. So really exciting what's happening there. Cottonwood Canyon Transportation, $150 million. Mayor Wilson, we use the mic, please.
So I'm interested, with so much happening at the session, I wasn't aware of the double track funding. Is that revenue stream deep enough to cover the capital, or will that also, like, where will the ongoing operational costs, how, can you just take a
Are
second?
you asking specifically about the new 200 million or the?
Well, and where that, I mean, I think we're all interested, sort of like, where is that project now? Is that revenue stream comprehensive enough to address capital and future operations? Can you talk about a little, because I think we'd all love to see that up and running. So wondering if there's still a hole elsewhere that will rely on other funds, or how that works.
Yeah, great question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to phone friends on this one, because we have UDOT and UTA here. And my thought is take this on the $1 billion strategic double tracking, and then the Point of the Mountain. Does it cover the capital? And then what about ongoing operations and maintenance? So take it away, people.
I can speak to the operations side. Do you want to speak to the capital side? Do you want to, I'll let you go first.
Okay.
Since you got to build it before we operate it.
Thanks, Carlson. So we have, just to clarify, we have a current strategic double tracking project that is about $1 billion project that, as Andrew was saying, we have in the president's budget, the federal portion of it, we already have a good share of state funding. Those combined would be $1 billion project that we are currently working on along with UTA. Then the commuter rail 200 million for Point of the Mountain Station plus double tracking is a separate project. That is about half the money needed for the capital on that project. So there's still, that gives us the I guess, supports that the state is interested in having a station there and gives us the ability to start working on that, start progressing it with the intent that there would be more funding later.
And Beth, feel free to chime in if I'm missing something. To the operation question, it doesn't cover operations. And so we obviously would either have to prioritize existing revenue, but hopefully, I think we're hopeful there is another potential revenue stream. Obviously, the county plays a significant role in that, as do other counties. And so that would be important to do, because if with increased frequency, you have to have, other cars, you've got to maintain those cars and train sets. You have additional staff to run them. It would be a significant increase over our current operation.
I assume you're referring to the
that
imposing the fifth.
Yeah, and obviously, Utah County and Davis and Weber County play a role in that because it goes through that whole segment. And so, it's a holistic challenge there, but certainly the capital is a significant barrier, and then the operations, follow-up operations will be a barrier too.
I was just going to add really quickly. Yeah, thanks, Carlton, because that really encompasses all of the things that we're looking at as an agency strategically, because obviously, again, we have to have the vehicles. And we also have to continue to maintain and upgrade our existing vehicles. And one of the things about that, and I think you might be talking about it in 260, is the specifics about the operational side. So maybe when you talk about Senate Bill 260, we can delve into that just a little bit further, because that operations piece, I think, is a real critical one as well.
Great comment. Mayor, did you get your answer you're looking for?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Mayor.
Andrew?
I appreciate you raising that, because it's critical on the roadway side and on the transit side, not just to build the things, but to be able to maintain and operate them and plan for that as well. Thank you. $150 million for Cottonwood Canyon transportation. And I want to be really clear about this. There is legislative intent language that is specific about what that money can be used for. And it is for enhanced bus service, tolling, a mobility hub, and resort bus stops for Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon. Then there's a whole slew of other projects at $241 million, which I won't go into, but are listed out in detail in our summary. And then specific funding also for rural, so 3rd through 6th class county roads as well. Any questions or other comments about transportation funding items anybody wants to raise? And if I'm assuming somebody is paying attention to comments we get online also. Okay, thank you very much. There's a whole slew of other growth-related appropriations for corridor preservation, for water, for housing and homelessness, for Point of the Mountain core infrastructure. I'm not going to go into detail on those. There's probably other people here or on that know more about those items than I do, but just note that some people have summarized that this session, one of the key themes of this session is planning for and investing for growth. Relevant to WFRC, there's funding for shared local administrative advisor, a staff person in each of the AOGs around the state's associations of government, specifically to help communities that are small and don't have city managers. And then a regional roadway grid network study jointly between the metropolitan planning organizations to look at the optimal spacing for roadways. So further study.
Andrew, can I do a quick interjection on that last item? I think that'll be part of the next regional transportation plan on some level, and you'll hear more about it as the Regional Growth Committee.
Thanks, Ted. Okay, now I'm going to quickly hit a few pieces of key legislation. First one, and I'll say my personal favorite bill of the session, Senate Bill 185, which moves to implement the Utah Trail Network. And with this one, Terry, I'm going to just turn to you. The governor and UDOT have been such champions of this. And so can you just take it away and describe it, please?
Sure. And I'm not going to say that that was my favorite, because I said I wanted two things for my birthday, which was on the last day of session. I wanted to make sure we had the right structure for transit and we had trails. So I'm going to be neutral, but I love I love that both of these.
Just like your actual children, you love both of these bills
Yes,
equally?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So yes, we're very excited about the trail network piece. I think the most important part of it is that we have ongoing funding so that we can run a good plan. As we all know, long-range planning helps us to get the right projects in place. And then as we get to that shorter term, we can fund things. But knowing we're going to have ongoing funding allows us to do some really good, strong planning and then be able to implement when we're done. And there's nothing worse than doing good planning and not having any money to implement something. So this is really exciting. I don't know a whole lot more than I did a month ago about exactly how we're going to implement this. One thing we do know is we'll be working with all the partners because through the MPOs and the long range planning process, there's been a lot of discussion about active transportation, how we can have a better trail network. The tricky thing for us to figure out is what will we call a regional trail versus not a regional trail. And the intent of this money would be to go towards that regional trail network. To that end, we did appoint a new group leader in our department over transit and trails. You may be familiar with his name from another project, Josh Van Jura. So he's going to be leading that effort for us because we have a lot of money to get going pretty quickly. So again, very excited about this, looking forward to working with everybody to try to figure out what that regional trail network looks like and how we can help that connect to all the communities.
Terry, thanks. I just want to say two more things about this. One is that the trails that would be constructed, this is paved, right? Paved trails. This is not dirt for recreational purposes, which is awesome also, but this is for paved trails for transportation commuting purposes. They'll be owned and maintained by UDOT. And it's meant to weave in and connect with the local city and county trail systems. And there's so many of you who are leading already in investing in trails, putting resources. Salt Lake County is, Davis County is, cities developing trails. I mean, all over the region, this is happening. And so the planning that we've collectively done together to identify priorities at the local level and at the regional level and the state level will directly inform what happens with this, but more process to come on how that happens. But Terry, Ben, it's fair to say it will be a collaborative process as we move forward. Okay. The other thing I just want to say, at the risk of hyperbole, but I don't think it is, I think when we look back 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I think that we will look at this decision to provide ongoing funding at the state level to couple with what is already happening at the local level. This will be one of those fork in the road kind of decisions about the quality of community that we have for air quality, for mobility, for public health, for quality of life generally, and the type of place that we want Utah on the Wasatch Front to be. So I just think this is really wonderful. Mike, please, Commissioner Stevenson.
Real quick question on this. Do you know across the country if there were many other states that are following the same type of formula, or is this something that we're setting the pace on?
I wouldn't say that we're necessarily the only place that's doing this. There are a lot of other communities that have great trail systems. And in fact, several of you have gone on trips around the country to visit and be inspired by some of those places. But I do know that Utah is now among one of the leading states in providing ongoing stable state funding for the trail system, coupled with the local funding that's already happening. So we're towards the front of the pack on this, isn't that where we want to be as Utah, this great state for the outdoors? It fits with who we are.
And we were able to attend, my wife and I, that announcement, and it was just such a powerful thing to hear that this was going to go on. And my wife's like, so is this something going to happen for the next few years? And I was like, this is a lifetime of planning. And every time we look at a new road, this is going to be a huge portion of how can we put a trail along that road to connect the entire state. And I thought, like you said, this is a fork in the road that our kids' kids will be able to look back and think, man, we maybe can eventually take a bicycle from north to south or east to west. So huge. Thank you.
And this is probably clear. I could probably go on and on about this. I'm looking around the room and online at so many people have led in this area who could talk so much about this. in the interest of time, we'll keep moving, okay? But it's really terrific. Okay, I'm trying to advance my own slides. Hold on. There we go. Just a few more. Senate Bill 260. This is the bill that gets at what we have referred to as the fifth local option transportation sales tax. This is the county option to impose a 0.20% local option sales tax, not required to impose. It is an option to impose. And it was set to expire. This option was set to expire in June of 2023. And under current law, it could only be used for transit. And this legislation modifies it so that it would actually be divided among transit, city, and county. And it is still a county option, but the deadline was eliminated. Now, I'm actually not going to go into all the details of how this would work in every county. We can provide this to you, but like it's different in each county, as you can see these flows and distributions. I do just want to note, Mayor Wilson, if you don't mind, I'm just going to note that Salt Lake County, I think, valiantly sought to have the flexibility to use the portion of the money raised in Salt Lake County for mental and behavioral health services, which is obviously a critical issue. That ultimately wasn't included in the bill, but I just wanted to acknowledge that effort. I turn my mic off. By the way, those of you that are county people or anybody, if you want technical information about this as you are considering this, we at WFRC would be happy to talk with you and sort of walk through the mechanics of the bill if anybody's interested in that. Yes.
Sorry, since you brought it up, could I just add a little to the county's efforts? If you look at that formula on the previous slide, the county piece, we're no longer in the local or in the county road business. We have very limited unincorporated area. Since this wouldn't be imposed is additive to the system, I do support the idea of the double tracking and ongoing revenue source. Another very key area that I've advocated for, and some of my colleagues who actually opposed and voted against the fifth option when our council considered, have advocated for more investment through UTA in the Southwest area, which I support. So I think this is something that's really interesting. I've had some offline conversations. We haven't put this on an agenda, but Salt Lake County will likely not impose because we would like another opportunity to go back and share with the legislature our interest. Because, if we were in a different position and still have this broad unincorporated area, we had many, many county roads, we would be very much in a different position. But counties throughout the state who wanted this authorization really and need it. We didn't want to hold them back and get in the middle of the politics around that. So we're happy the bill passed, but we will be going forward with another attempt to see, because that formula breakdown for us, that 0.05 to the county for roads and transportation projects is being addressed as we see it through that other bucket, and the additional 0.05 the cities would receive for their local roads. So that's a little more context of that situation. We are a divided council. The majority of the council did support the behavioral health inclusion. There are people who did not, but the majority does. Our county position was in support. And additionally, we appreciate the League of Cities checking in with the city mayors. And I think 80% agreed with the idea that behavioral health component is a good thing. So we're happy to have the cities supporting and the majority of the council supporting. And we are looking forward to another conversation around this next year.
Mayor, thank you.
Wanted those of you who are interested in this investment to partner with us so that we can move forward.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to bring this home here. HB 301, I think this is the last bill I'll talk about. HB 301, transportation tax amendments. Representative Schultz does three things. It provides temporary gas tax relief with a short-term 2-cent decrease in the gas tax, and then establishes a more gradual increase in gas tax going forward. The way that the gas tax is designed right now, it's tied to inflation, and because inflation has been so high, the gas tax was going up much faster than any of us anticipated or planned. And so what this bill does is sort of bends the curve down. It will still increase gradually over time, but it's a more stable, reasonable pace of increase. And then it also establishes a charge on retail electric vehicle charging. This is only at a place where you pay to charge. It's not for home charging, or if a business provides charging for their employees, it does not impose a charge there. This, in other words, this would only charge for a charge when there's a charge for a charge. You got that? Okay. You're all smart. Everybody followed that. Okay. And then the last piece is that it increases vehicle registration fees by $7, with $2 of that going specifically to rurals. And the idea collectively of this bill is to provide for state, cities, and counties more stability and revenue out into the future to be able to maintain the infrastructure that exists. Then there's a bunch of other bills, HTRZ and stationary planning and a whole bunch of other transportation electrification, et cetera. I'm not going to go through those now, but suffice to say there's details included in our summary. And I didn't even talk about all the housing bills and everything else. You can get information about those, I think, in other forums. Unless there's any other questions or additions, Mr. Chair, that concludes that report.
Thank you, Andrew. Great comments.
Oh, and then I guess, wait a minute. I'm so sorry.
Go,
We do
please.
have, we have the other things you mentioned already. So did you want to say anything else? I'm so sorry.
I was actually going to ask you any questions or comments.
Okay.
Hearing none.
Then
Okay.
can we hit on the other thing, the safety, the safe streets for all? Wayne
Please.
Bennion is going to take a minute on safe streets for all. Wayne.
Thank you. As you're all well aware, a critical aspect of designing and maintaining transportation systems is making them safe for.
Wayne, I'm sorry, hold on one sec. We had a little miss on sharing. So can you drop whoever's sharing right now and let me put back up the safe streets for all? Okay. Keep going, Wayne. Now you're good.
A critical aspect of designing and maintaining transportation systems is to make them safe for all users. And I want to talk just briefly about an effort, a collaborative effort WFRC is leading, and then talk a bit about the funding for that effort and also next steps. So to begin with, at the request of a handful of representatives of local governments in the region, WFRC embarked last June on developing an application for obtaining some funding for developing a safety action plan to address safety throughout the region. All of the WFRC region, all the counties. And so this effort has begun, and funding has been received. And the key outcome of this effort will be to develop a safety action plan in collaboration with local governments, and as well as the State Department of Transportation and the Utah Transit Authority. And two key objectives for this effort. The first is in line with the funding received, and that's to prevent fatal and serious injury crashes on roadways throughout the region. And you can see some elements of the safety action plan listed on this slide. I'll just note this extensive public involvement will include a significant effort to engage local elected officials and city and county staffs, as well as numerous other stakeholders in the public as this plan to help us prevent fatal and serious injury crashes is developed. Another key objective of this effort is to make local governments eligible for federal funding to implement safety improvements that are identified either categorically or specifically as part of this plan. So there has to be a safety action plan in place before local governments are eligible to apply for these Safe Streets for All funds. So as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, One of the many discretionary grant programs that was established is this Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A. There's about $1 billion available annually through the life of that transportation bill. And WFRC, along with hundreds of other entities throughout the country, was awarded funding to develop an action plan. And next slide. And the next step is to get a grant agreement in place to utilize these funds with the Federal Highway Administration, and to advertise and get a consultant team on board. And our intent is to complete the action plan for the region by May of 2024, so that for the 2024 funding cycle, that $1 billion nationwide that's anticipated, local governments will be able to apply by September, which is the anticipated deadline for that cycle of funding, by September of 2024 for implementation grants. It's a brief update.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay, any comments, questions?
And now, Mayor, we've got one more grant to give an update on, and comes Hugh Van Wagenen. Hugh, come on down.
Thank you. Yeah, pleasure to be with you. Just giving you an update on a RAISE grant, which is a federal grant formerly known as BUILD, formerly before that known as TIGER. And some of you may be familiar with the TIGER Award that our region received collectively in 2016 to produce infrastructure that would improve first and last mile connections to transit. And that was such a successful project back in 2016 between all of our partners, our transportation partners, counties, and local communities, that we decided to go forward again. This is something that, again, the transportation partners, UDOT, UTA, WFRC, MAG, and local communities been working on for a little over a year, and finally got this submitted just at the end of February. A huge shout out to the UDOT grants team. They were terrific and wonderful in helping us move through this process. Essentially, what the application consisted of this time around was 10 cities, 15 projects, focusing on, again, access to transit, making those first and last mile connections, which are often the most difficult connections to make, the very beginning or end of a journey. From your origin to your destination. These projects included sidewalk replacement, new sidewalk, filling in gaps, buffered bike lanes, multi-use trail connections, and also intersection improvements for folks to get through those intersections. All told, it's about $31 million worth of projects. And the request to Federal Highways is for 25 million of that to be covered, and the rest would be local match. We are really happy and thrilled with the application that got put together. It feels a very strong application, and awards will be announced at the end of June to see where we went from here. So again, 15 projects might not seem like a whole lot in the bigger picture of things. And I just say this is one part of a broad strategy to improve first and last mile across the board, and looking for different funding opportunities and different ways to get these projects constructed. Of these 15, we started with a list of over 200. So there's a lot of work to be done out there. Again, this is one effort because we saw an opportunity, but we'll look for other efforts moving forward as well. Thank you.
Great comments. Anybody have any comments, questions about this? Okay. Great work. Thank you. Okay, we do have item number 5. This is an information only Wasatch Choice Vision and the 2023 to 2028 Regional Transportation Plan. As Ted indicated earlier, we're in the final year of our 4-year process of updating the Wasatch Choice Regional Vision and the Regional Transportation Plan. Now, the Wasatch Choice is our shared framework and coordinate with transportation, as it was mentioned earlier, land use and economic development. Now, the Regional Transportation Plan charts, of course, charts the course of the next 30 years for regional roads, transit, and rails. Now, the RTP is the transportation element of our standard Wasatch Choice Vision. Now, Ted is going to talk about the overall update of the Wasatch Choice Vision. And before that, before Jory basically steps in and provides an update on the RTP. So Ted, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, May is a really exciting time for the council with the adoption of both the overarching Wasatch Choice as well as the Regional Transportation Plan. So I'm going to lead with that overarching update and what that means. And then Jory Johnner is going to get into where we're at in the process of the Regional Transportation Plan update. And this is reflecting what Chair Dandoy just mentioned. Again, you are the steering committee for the Regional Transportation Plan. The last 4 years have not have been more in the space of an update, working with individual local governments on the local plans and ordinances component of Wasatch Choice. But it all happens within this framework of communicating the 4 underlying strategies that are behind the Wasatch Choice, which are, hey, let's work together to provide real transportation choices. You've been hearing a lot about that, that residents have different options to meet their housing wants and needs, support housing options, preserve open space, and strengthen centers of communities. Now that last one, it would be an update that we would release here in May. Previously, it said link housing and economic development opportunities with transportation, but really the way that we do that is by having strong downtowns, town centers in locations that are strategic. That is, near interchanges and major roadways and transit stations. And it's interesting, as planners, sometimes we speak kind of clinically, like, hey, we can help people get to where they need to go if we link the location of housing and economic development and transportation. But really, in our individual communities, we're talking about creating great places. So that's why we're proposing a tweak to how we speak about that last strategy, and that would be released here in May. Now, I mentioned a lot of the work on the land use side in the Wasatch Choice Vision has been us hearing from local governments about how their specific vision is changing for centers. So we have gone out and visited with all of the communities in our region to refine the boundaries for their centers and to ask them what are the names that we should use for each center. So the idea here is that we speak more specifically about what local governments are doing to create great places. And then the other thing on the communication side that we anticipate here in May with the May release is a new website and a new Wasatch Choice video. That's kind of just a high level. I'm going to turn to Mike Sobczak. He's going to show you a video that we put together working collaboratively with the Wasatch Choice partners, including Mountain Land Association of Governments, that looks at how do we communicate in a few minutes what this Wasatch Choice Vision is. And I think it'll be helpful generally, but you also see kind of a new approach to how we talk about the vision in this. Mike, take it away.
Designing and building areas called centers. Centers are special gathering places in our communities where people work, shop, have identified centers in the Wasatch Choice Vision, our shared vision for the future. Creating great centers of communities is a core strategy of the vision. Having a center in your city near transit, trails, or major roadways gives residents more choices about what to visit, how to get around, and what to live in. And since these residents tend to drive less, use less water, and require fewer miles of new infrastructure, it saves money for the entire state, benefiting those people who work and live outside of the centers as well. Let's take a tour of a few current and planned centers around the region. We'll start by flying up to Weber County and visiting downtown Ogden, which is an anchor to the economy and the commercial, academic, dining, and entertainment hub for northern Utah. Ogden continues to invest in its downtown as a special, unique place, and it bustles with activity year-round. Ogden reworked their downtown zoning ordinances to produce the right development for the community. The economic health of the region is dependent upon the success of this center. Next, we travel south into Davis County to spotlight the work planned around Clearfield's Frontrunner Station. This is a community center taking shape with transportation choices in mind. By developing new homes and jobs within an easy walk of the Frontrunner Station, the residents will be able to access opportunities around the region without driving. Workers will be able to get to Clearfield without getting on I-15. This is good for traffic and for air quality. And Clearfield is planning for great community spaces in the heart of this new development. Now let's travel south into Salt Lake County to Mill Creek, an established city that through infill and redevelopment is bringing a unique mixed-use center to life in the heart of the community. Right in the center of this development is the Mill Creek Commons, which is the first element the city created to give its residents a gathering place, and it's already thriving with activity. Finally, we travel into Utah County to downtown Vineyard. Vineyard is another planned city center with visionary design, taking shape next to the Frontrunner Station. Right now, most of the homes in Vineyard are single-family detached with a yard. But this center will accommodate a mix of housing choices for people at different stages of life, like an older couple who don't want the hassle of having to mow their lawn and shovel snow, but still want to be near their grandkids. A younger adult couple who are just getting started and don't need much space, but want access to good restaurants, entertainment, and transportation. As one of the fastest growing communities in the state, Vineyard is looking ahead at the varying needs of their residents. This is an exciting time with so many examples of communities doing great things in planning centers across our region and state. Working together, we can implement the Wasatch Choice Vision and welcome centers into our communities to enhance our collective quality of life. Learn more at wasatchchoice.com.
Okay, and we will or may have already shared the link to that if you want to catch that again. Go.
Try it now, Ted.
Okay. All right, thank you. So that's just an overview of a couple of the things that we're working on, mainly in the communications side, updating the great work that's been happening locally in our shared Wasatch Choice Vision. Now, let's turn to the significant regional transportation plan component of Wasatch Choice and get an update on that from Jory Johnner, unless there are any questions on that. Jory?
Thanks, Ted. All right. As a reminder, the RTP is multimodal. It includes roadway, transit, and active transportation projects, so walking and biking. It's coordinated with UDOT and UTA and the local communities. And as you can see on here, there's a variety of mode types in the regional transportation plan. The RTP is developed on a 4-year cycle, must be financially constrained, meet air quality budgets, and directly ties to the local community's land use plans and the Wasatch Choice Vision. We do not just identify a list of projects needed between now and 2050, but work to identify when projects are needed and expected to be funded in about 10-year blocks. As you can see, we have more needs than revenue, and some projects end up being in the unfunded portion of our plans. Nearly all funding sources, federal, state, local, are related to capacity, look at the RTP. So specifically phase one, as you can see, these programs look to that phase as projects get implemented and programmed. We've been working on the plan for the last 3+ years. First, by exploring external forces and policies like connected and autonomous vehicles, telecommuting, micromobility, signal priority for transit, road usage charge, and street connectivity, to name a few. We developed a draft project list needed by 2050, and then identified when these projects were needed and by phase and financially constraining the plan. We're about ready to finalize the plan here in a couple months. Over the life of the plan, or the last 3 years, we received more than 3,200 comments. I think that's a record for a plan, at least in my tenure here at WFRC. And these came through our fall workshops. They came through our technical advisory committee. So the RGC technical advisory committee, which the planners, economic development from the local communities, UDOT, UTA attend, stakeholder meetings, and our public comment periods. I appreciate all the comments we've received and the input. It's made the plan better. And I appreciate our working relationship with our transportation partners, UDOT and UTA, and the communities in reviewing these comments. We didn't review these comments and make decisions just here at WFRC. We reached out to all of you. As you recall, we went out to public comment after the January Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting. Since then, we've received 1,600 comments from that. So as you would expect, it's taking us a bit of time to review these comments. We're anticipating only a handful of technical corrections to projects based on requests from project sponsors, and we're planning to report on those at the May Regional Growth Committee meeting. On the next slide, I want to show you at a high level geographically the improvements and changes made to the 2019 RTP, which will be reflected in the 2023 plan. There has been also significant interest in Little Cottonwood Canyon, environmental impact statement and their process. And after I show these improvements, we'll take a few minutes to address some of those frequently asked questions regarding the RTP and the EIS. So public comments, as I explained, are one component of the planning process. But as you can see here through the review of external forces and policies, input from local communities, our transportation partners, stakeholders, updates to the vision. We did an amendment in 2011 or 2021, population and employment projections, and utilizing our project evaluation process and the Wasatch Choice goals. We've improved the 2019 plan quite a bit. And this map, it says it all. As you work on this over 3 years, we make incremental changes to the plan. And then when you step back, you see the amount of changes we did make. So these maps show new projects, removed projects, and updated projects would include, and those updated projects would include changes that are to the financially constrained phase, the project types, or modifications to the extent of a project. This map only shows roadway and transit projects that will be ultimately reflected in the 2023 plan. We didn't include active transportation projects on this map. If you recall, we did not have a financially constrained active transportation plan in the 2019 RTP. And due to a significant amount of local communities updating their local active transportation master plans, we decided that we didn't want to overwhelm the map with all of those changes as well. But know that active transportation projects, there's been added, removed, and updated, very similar to this, the road and transit piece, with every project now in the 2023 plan being in a financially constrained phase. So we're working on that. Not planning to go through any specifics on this. Happy to answer any questions, but I think it says a lot on the amount of work that we've done with our transportation partners and local communities on the plan. With 2 months left in the RTP process, we can see the finish line now. Staff will continue to review comments and finalize the document. May 25th, the draft 2023 RTP will be considered by the council for adoption following the Regional Growth Committee discussions at its May 18th meeting. We'll continue to work with our other MPOs, UDOT and UTA, on the 2023 Unified Transportation Plan update throughout this next summer as well, and plan to have something, I think, by September with that update. So with that, take any questions on the RTP.
So I've got a question.
Please.
When can we and how can we review the comments as you review them? Will they be available at some point, or are they available now in real time?
We have collected all of the comments. We're not done reviewing them and addressing them all. Normally, the comments are included in our regional transportation plan document. We'll include all 3,200 comments in an appendice. I think it's Appendix A, with the comment and our response to those comments. And so they will be available, and we expect to have that hopefully by the end of April. We're shooting for, so we can have that out for everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Joy. That's great, great information. I will indicate to committee, one of the interesting pieces to this, and if you've been following along, there has been a lot of conversation relationship to, in terms of how does the RTP work, and specifically, how does the environmental impact studies, okay, relate to that? It certainly was a conversation that's occurred in the last meetings, and I think it's an ongoing conversation that needs to be addressed. And so I think it'd be valuable, if you don't mind, then maybe Andrew, you can help us kind of walk through that relationship. I did get a chance to see this question set. I think it helped a little bit with that. So maybe if you can take a second, let's talk just a little bit about to the committee about that relationship between the RTP and the environmental impact.
And Andrew, I'd add, this was included in the packets, a link to our website. If you don't have that in front of you, you can use the QR code to get to the version on the screen. Obviously, is not readable. So if you want to read along or look at this as Andrew's covering it, use the QR code or that shortened address to type into your computer.
Great for clarification, Jory. Thank you.
Thanks, Jory. And sure, Mayor Dando, I am happy to just take a few brief moments on this. And as Jory noted, and as Ted is showing, we put together, because these issues are kind of complicated, I think, the relationship between the regional transportation plan and an environmental impact statement. And so we put together an updated one-pager that helps to address some of these questions. I also emailed out to all of you, the members of the Regional Growth Committee and the members of the Wasatch Front Regional Council in the last few days, a little information, including this document, and additional materials. So what I want to do is and because, as you noted, Mayor Dandoy, in this committee, our last committee meeting, we did have some discussion about this. And then in our council meeting, I want to provide a little info about how the RTP relates to the EIS. So as noted already, we're scheduled to adopt that updated RTP in May after years of development. And our council leadership from Regional Growth Committee and the council actually asked us to put together some additional information about this, given all the discussion. So that's where the one-pager came from. First, I should note that the most of the 1,000+ projects that are in the regional transportation plan actually don't come out of a federally established environmental process. And so we at WFRC, working with you and your local communities, have very broad discretion in developing the plan. But our role is limited in the context of an EIS process. And so in short summary, and if you're sort of following along on the sheet here, this is getting at this question: what's the role of WFRC as a metropolitan planning organization with regard to an EIS? So as an MPO, we are required to include in the regional transportation plan all regionally significant transportation projects or elements that are currently identified in an EIS, an environmental impact statement, or other environmental process under NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. We don't have the authority to only include or to exclude certain elements of the EIS. And then we do have a responsibility, which is once we incorporate the EIS elements into the RTP, we have to verify that the entire RTP with those EIS elements included satisfies the regional air quality, conformity, and fiscal constraint requirements. So that's our role in the sequencing. Now, what I've just described has been our consistent practice with EISs over decades. And it's also pursuant to federal regulations. But again, given the recent focus on these issues, we wanted to make sure that we were doing it right. So we consulted with the Federal Highway Administration to confirm that our understanding and our approach is accurate. And we also sought the advice of outside legal counsel to look at these issues, and they independently analyzed the issues and reached the same conclusions. And in the email, again, that I sent out to the Regional Growth Committee and the council earlier this week, we included a copy of that legal memo. So I don't need to perhaps belabor this, Mayor, but I thought it was important and appreciate your direction to us to provide a little more information on that federally established process that governs the way we as a metropolitan planning organization operate, and then also how that relates to the separate federal process for the EIS. And we're happy to attempt to answer any questions if anybody has any, Mayor.
Okay, is there any questions? And I do have one, so maybe you can help us through this.
Yeah.
In the beginning of this presentation today, there was a conversation that talked about $100 million, $150 million that's been allocated to the Cottonwoods.
Yeah.
Now, I find it kind of interesting that looks like UDOT's got that funding stream. And it happened, from what I heard, talks a little bit about what I read here in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of phase one. Do you see that to be a real catalyst to help us to get through the Cottonwood issues, what they have those issues, and trying to get now have the funding to address phase one in terms of what this plan is actually trying to do?
Mayor, I'm going to actually see if UDOT will address that question, because it's our role. It's not our role actually to make the determinations about what happens with the EIS. So I don't want to try to comment on that. Terry, can I turn to you to address the mayor's question, please?
Sure. The funding that was identified, the 150 million, is, I think, as Andrew noted very carefully, it's for very specific things. It's all it can be used for, but those are the things that are identified in our environmental document as the first phase approach to solving some of the issues in Little Cottonwood Canyon. So the intent would be take the 150 million and use it to do the mobility hub, the tolling, the enhanced bus service, and the ski resort bus stops. Just a clarification, the long-range plan, the RTP does show in phase one widening of Wasatch Boulevard. That is not included in the funding stream of the 150 million. So when we talk about phase one, it can get phase one of the environmental includes certain things, phase one of the RTP includes certain things. But the language is very specific. The intent language through the legislative session is very specific about what it can be used for.
Hey, Terry, thank you. That's great information. So in essence, what you're saying is that the legislators also seen some of the challenges. And personally, I'm living in Roy, and there isn't hardly a week go by that we're not seeing on the news, okay, the traffic jam that is basically taking place up Little Cottonwood. I mean, Andrew, to be honest with you, it seems like there's a whole line of cars going up that canyon, all because they're trying to deal with this issue in terms of trying to get access, I guess, to those great ski resorts up there. That's a significant challenge. I guess my comment would be, Terry, from your perspective, does this additional funding give you then, UDOT, an opportunity to really try to get something moving in terms of help resolve some of those problems we're seeing up there? And remember, I'm in northern Utah, but it is front page news, okay, and a lot of the newscasts that I'm witnessing and watching.
So I would say a couple of things needed to happen. We need to finish our environmental document in order to move ahead with spending the money. But I think having the money there certainly signals that the importance everyone puts on trying to solve a problem up there and do it with a phased approach. So that would be our intent, would be to work towards trying to implement that funding in the way that it was described in the legislation.
Terrific. That does open up opportunities. There's any other comments or questions relative to item 5 on this agenda?
So yeah, if I could take a second.
Please, ma'am.
I guess you're all not surprised. So I was one of 2 votes a month ago to not move forward on this. And Andrew and I appreciate your engagement on this, my further education. And I think one thing, first of all, thanks for the legal analysis. I have obviously Salt Lake County has retained DC leads who are very versed in this subject as well. And our district attorney is also going through to see if we would concur. I think one of the things I'd like to ask in a second, Andrew, is if you share a little bit about what would happen should we choose to delist. I think the memo and the legal analysis will say, as you had mentioned, that we are as a body required to include all active projects through an EIS, regardless of the phase, is my understanding. And then there would then be this additional connection to the air quality piece, as well as the fiscal constraint analysis that's provided. Having said that, I think if you approach this as I do and my constituents do, we're getting a resounding amount of input that is anti-gondola, not a lot of pro. And I think I get back to the education I've had in this body day in and day out about the vision that we have for our community and the tabletops that are held. And even today, we looked at how the RTP might, and I asked the question, connect to our vision. And I still have heartburn, frankly, over the idea that we would pass out a document that indeed includes a project that is so deeply controversial. And that if the comments track those of the EIS process, are going to be resoundingly against including this project in our RTP. I get, and I worked for the federal government, I get the complexity, and I respect the Federal Highway Association and the UDOT's role and our role. However, the one thing I know is if we were to take an action as a body to delist, the sun comes up tomorrow. We will not cease to move shovel-ready projects because it's a long-term planning document. What I suspect is that we have to have go to a process, and I was learning from you, Andrew, a little more about it, and I'd like you, if you would, to share with the body what would happen then. I frankly believe, having had some exposure, federal congressional staffer at a senior level in the 90s, a little bit of understanding of the EIS process, complexity and all this, that we might be the very body that calls together a meeting of the minds to solve the problem. So I'd like to know your impression of what would happen. The majority of the members agree with me and say we should not include a project at this stage. It's long-term, it's far out. It would be much better to delist. I understand it puts UDOT in a position prior to the ROD being finalized. That's one step. I understand that there needs to be a movement of all the other great projects, the 99.5% or whatever it is of other projects that would remain, to make sure we don't hold up any that are in that first phase and truly might be shovel ready. I get that there would need to be work done to address that. But I think that I would be in favor of the legal process, the meeting of the minds, the convening that need to happen, even at the highest levels of these organizations. So I am not put in a position to vote against the will of my residents and what I think is a misguided approach for the viability long-term. And then I also do want to compliment the efforts by UDOT and the legislature to identify and address some of this early phase. We think there's some broader investment that's needed, common sense solutions beyond the EIS. And I believe that we're in a really great place as a community to agree on those early phases and get moving. So that was a little bit long-winded, but could you take that? Could you explain what you think happens the day after March 23rd if this project were delisted?
Sure. So just to make sure we're on the same page, what we're talking about here is the idea of removing from the regional transportation plan a regionally significant project, in this case, the gondola.
And I listed the wrong date. I will acknowledge that's May.
In May, right?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. Right, because we're on schedule and have been that in May, Regional Growth Committee and our regional council would take action to approve the regional transportation plan. And so, Mayor, what you're talking about is, I'll just say it like this: despite our past practice and the guidance from Federal Highway Administration and the interpretation from our lawyers that we are required to include all regionally significant projects in the regional transportation plan, reflecting the results of the EIS, and that we don't have the authority to pick and choose elements of the EIS. What happens if we do that anyway and we vote to remove, or I don't have a vote, you vote to remove a regionally significant project? So this is where we get into the intricacies, and we've talked about this, as you noted, we get into the intricacies of the federal processes. And there's a federal, our work as an MPO is actually not governed by state law principally, it's principally governed by federal law and regulations. And the EIS process, similarly, is a federally established process. When this body, as an MPO, votes to approve the regional transportation plan, that's actually not the final step. The final step is getting sign off from the federal government. And that federal sign off comes actually in the context of the environmental regulations and the air quality conformity through the EPA regulations. And so what happens is we approve the two things, essentially, the regional transportation plan, and accompanying that is the regional emissions analysis, where we evaluate the contents of the regional transportation plan and ensure that that regional transportation plan emissions are in conformity with the established emissions budgets that are established for our area. And we send those things to the federal government, and there's a review by the federal government collectively by what's called the Interagency Consultation Team. And that's comprised of FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, and then also at the local level, the MPOs, the Metropolitan Planning Organizations, UDOT, UTA, Division of Air Quality. So this group comes together under federal regulations to review the air quality conformity analysis and make a decision of whether that and the regional transportation plan are compliant with the regulations and with the air quality budgets. Now, if that group does not sign off that the plan and the air quality emissions budget is in conformity, then the RTP is not approved. And so why wouldn't they sign off? Well, they might not sign off because, as we discussed, the regional transportation plan is required under federal regulations to include all regionally significant projects. And they might not sign off if any of the members of that group raised a concern about the adequacy of the plan and its inclusion of all projects, and that all regionally significant projects are evaluated for air quality conformity purposes. Okay, so if there is a hiccup in that process of approval and conformity being given, then the new regional transportation plan does not get approved. It is not in force. So then we are frozen, if you will, at the 2019 regional transportation plan. So then that does not mean, let me just be clear, that does not mean that like construction stops in the region, okay? What it does mean is that all of those changes that Jory was highlighting before to the projects all around the region that have been advanced in planning, have been moved up in phase, that has made them eligible then for application to the federal government for funding, for review by UDOT and the Transportation Commission for being in phase 1, et cetera, that all of that gets frozen unless and until the plan is adopted and then a conformity finding is given by the federal government. So that may have been more or less than you were looking for.
I got to follow up.
Okay.
So, and this is, you're repeating what we talked about on the phone. I just wanted the larger group to kind of understand the complexity. But one thing that I'm now curious about is, this meeting of the various federal representatives, UDOT, UTA, et cetera, if we were to remove the gondola in phase 3, staff would have time to work on the air quality analysis after without the gondola, right? And then the conformity would still be in alignment with, I mean, you wouldn't show up to that meeting, or the process would not move forward without the chance for Wasatch Regional Council to adjust the plan that was voted and passed that did not include, thus meeting the need for the air quality conformity piece, correct?
Yeah, so you're saying
You would
we-
have time to regroup.
we wouldn't, s-
You
we
wouldn't
would not,
submit the gondola plans, air quality piece without it being adjusted before it moved forward to that group.
we would submit whatever the regional council adopts. Okay, including or excluding whatever is in the plan, and the air quality conformity, our analysis is done on whatever is adopted. So if there was a decision to change the regional transportation plan, then we would redo the air quality analysis. Is that what
So
you're
the
getting?
glitch
Yeah.
at that point is the lack of conformity to the EIS. It's not the air quality piece.
Well, under the regulations, if we were to modify the plan to remove a regionally significant project, even if we revise the air quality conformity analysis, that doesn't address the issues that I was talking about before of the requirement to have all regionally significant projects included in the plan.
But at that point, it's not a regionally significant project because it's been removed. So because you'll still have another, right?
Well, not the way that we or our attorneys understand this, or the Federal Highway Administration understands this. Our plan is required to have all regionally significant projects included, and a project that emerges out of an EIS process is a regionally significant project, and we don't, as an entity, have the authority to pick and choose which projects are included and are not included. So an MPO removing a project does not have the effect of making that project not regionally significant.
And I'm not putting this on any of the incredible partners at the table, but we are basically held hostage to a process. We have no choice but to move forward a project that many of us still have questions about, some of us actively oppose. And I wonder if there isn't a way to eliminate EIS projects within an EIS stream from consideration as included. I mean, it's a chicken and egg, and I see it as a very deep flaw in the system somehow between EIS process, federal highway, and in this case, our MPO as it relates to, I mean, if you're approaching this as, again, the public is, we don't, and Mayor Mendenhall said it in her comments, this is yet another step in a project that is highly controversial being sort of baked into and moving forward towards completion without an opportunity for the reflection of public comment to enter into decision makers' hands, right? We're going to see it. We're going to see a vast majority of people commenting, saying, no, no, no. Yet we're held hostage to this situation by what I kind of see as a flawed process, frankly. So that's what I'm struggling with. And I want to thank the partners at the table. I don't put this on any one of you. I just see this as it is a very, it's the biggest challenge I've faced here as a member of Wasatch, happily as a Wasatch Regional Fund. So regional council member throughout the years.
Well, let me just interject. And I think what I heard from you, Andrew, I've got a significant project sitting up in my community. In fact, it borders both Davis and Weber County. I have a concern with your comments suggesting is that project may very well be hampered or won't go forward in large part because we can't get this problem behind us and get that RTP basically approved so we can move forward. And so I think any person in here that basically represents a municipality or a county has to take in consideration is that I can't speak to how big the Cottonwood Canyon problem or Little Cottonwood problem exists within the RTP, but it certainly is not the big issue facing here. It's certainly one issue, but certainly not the big one. I'm really more concerned about about all the other projects that seem to be and needs to be moved forward. And if they are going to be hampered or going to be delayed or there's going to be a problem, I think we missed something here.
But if
let
I
me-
could,
let me
that's a
offer-
gream comment until it happens in your county or in your city. And you're in
understand,
the reverse
But,
position.
but by the same token is that I am bound by some element of suggesting that as a committee, that I simply says, here's in fact the key components that need to move forward in order for us to basically set this pattern, or at least the last 4 years of our efforts to get this done. And now I got this individual situation surfacing that could hamper all of that coming to at least a stop. And whether or not it's right or wrong or different. And then I'm bound by a crazy element associated with this that deals with a legal position that suggests is do I have a legal right to remove it? And that's a tough conversation to have because I have to basically base my judgment and my plan based on what the law says. Now, at the end of the day, if it basically comes down to simply says ignore the law, then I'm confused. Because
Well-
I basically go up there and say that we need to move that. But that's my opinion. Let me work this. There's probably people in here who'd like to make a comment on this, and it's important that at least we have other comments in terms of this. Is there anybody who'd like to make a comment?
I do, just as being one of the new members. This is our first go through one of these. This is our plan or just a piece of plans for the next 20, 30 years. Does this piece of the gondola have anything to do with the financing or it's simply we are just studying? Because I think a lot of people we may be okay with studying it, but we don't maybe want to contribute $1 billion to it. And so if it's just that we're saying no to studying it, or are we saying, no, we're not funding something at this point?
Well, I can address that. And then I also, Mayor, I know we've had at least Mayor Silvestrini wants to make a comment here as well. But I'll just, Mayor Stanger, if I'm understanding your question, this is one of the questions that we addressed on the FAQ. And does the RTP approve or fund a gondola? And the answer is no. The RTP does not approve or provide funding for a gondola in Little Cottonwood Canyon, nor does it allocate future funds for the project. It simply reflects the EIS at this point in time and reflects the EIS cost estimates for a project. So put another way, including the results of the EIS in the regional transportation plan, which we are required to do, does not mean that the funding is available for any elements of that EIS. That is a separate process. And as has been noted and Terry described, $150 million has now been provided for phase one, the busing elements, but that does not mean that there is funding available for any of the other elements. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, so let's say it's in this plan 10, 15 years from now, it's now $2-3 billion. Which body then would decide, sorry, ski resorts, unless you're paying half of this, we're not interested, or whatever the number becomes? Does that come before us, or that would be simply a UDOT thing at that point in time?
Well, in order for any project in the plan to actually be, to move forward and be built, it actually has to be moved up into phase one. And we don't, under our processes, we don't move projects into phase one unless there's more certainty about funding. So again, we wouldn't be deciding whether there is funding available, but we would be reflecting whether there's funding provided. And then again, the actual process to do any project comes to the project owner. If it's a city project, the city has to ultimately decide, are we going to build it and have the money available? And in this case, that would be something that would have to go through UDOT if there was funding available at some point in the future. I think I answered that right. And Terry can help if I didn't, but I want to make sure that also that we get to other comments from the members here.
I think we got a hand, looks like Mayor Silvestrini, you have a comment?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, but yeah, so, I think unfortunately, members of the public and maybe even members of this committee or the regional council have gotten the idea that WFRC is the venue for stopping the gondola. And I think the legal memorandum that we received makes it clear that because
Mayor, looks like we lost you.
with respect to a specific project. Okay, maybe you're going to lose me because I'm moving, but can you hear me now?
Let's go ahead.
Mayor, maybe if you
Apparently not.
can, Mayor, turn your video off on your phone so that you're just using audio.
See? All right, I'll save some bandwidth. Anyway, I don't know where I left off, but or where you've stopped hearing me, but what I was trying to say is that because we have an EIS process, which is involved, that the regulations require that we include the entire EIS, and it's a regionally significant project. So this is not the venue to stop the gondola, and to take the risk of freezing the RTP or jeopardizing other projects in our region, even delaying them, given the growth pressures we face, would have dire consequences to many other communities in our region. So I don't think, there are other avenues to stop the gondola. There's a legal process with respect to challenging an EIS, and that's where the effort should be focused. It is not going to work to focus it on our council approving the RTP. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, I believe, Dave, you have a comment, please.
Yeah, thank you. I actually think Mayor Wilson made some great points about, the public process coming to this body. I just wanted to ask, as a new member of this group, what was the position that this body's taken previously in regard to the gondola?
WFRC has not taken, and nor is it taking, a position on the gondola. We have, in years past, we have recognized that there are issues in Little Cottonwood Canyon and put placeholder projects, but then we defer. This is the way that we do things and have done things for decades under federal regulations. When there is a federally recognized environmental process, we defer to that process and then incorporate the results of that process. So we're not taking a position pro or con. And I would just add to that, I know this is a charged issue, and just for myself and for our staff, I just want to be really clear that what we're trying to do here in all of this discussion is just explain what our understanding of the rules are and the processes that govern our work. And we've done that in consultation, again, with federal officials and with legal counsel. So we're not taking a position, we're just providing the information about the process.
There was never a vote to advance this to the RTP.
A month ago, it was moved forward to public comment, but it was not a vote to support or not.
And that had two and opposed. Is that what you said previously, Mayor? It's just interesting because if this group really was opposed to the gondola, then I think Mayor Wilson's point is more valid. If this group is more indifferent or even supportive of the gondola, then this idea of taking it off the list or delisting it seems less relevant.
I just note, council member, that as we were describing before, the role of the Metropolitan Planning Organization when there is an EIS is limited. And that's not staff or council members. It is our role within the federal structure as an organization is limited as to what we have the authority to do and not do.
And I think that's relevant to this conversation, because we may be basically pushing down, Dave, to an area that I'm not so sure we have the authority to do at this body. But it certainly is a conversation. It could be read into the minutes. It certainly will be part of the comments that are coming in. All that will take in consideration. The challenge is going to be does the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and particularly the Regional Growth Committee, have the authority? Now, my comment would be certainly this is an information conversation. Next month, the Regional Growth Committee has to take a vote. And I think really, if we're going to make this work, let us take that vote. I'd be interested to see what all the 1,600 comments that are coming in. I'd be interested to know what everybody's, not everybody, but certainly a bulk of the people are thinking, and then let that lay into the conversation. When I turn as the chairman and turn to every committee member and says, do you vote for the RTP as written or not? And if at the end of the day it's not, then so be it. Okay, we make a recommendation back to the Wasatch Front Regional Council that says we do not support the RTP as written. That's a recommendation. Ultimately, the Regional Growth Council, or excuse me, the Wasatch Regional Council then has to make a final decision as a council of whether they forward the RTP or don't. But we're going to take that vote. And so I would recommend, and I think Mayor Wilson, you said it best in one of the previous meetings, get smart, understand the issues here. Because at the end of the day, the committee is going to make that and take that decision. Commissioner,
Could I have a comment at one point before we
I'll let
close?
you.
Thank you.
Also, you know, Mayor I'm sorry. Mayor Zoltansky has a comment. I think
I'll
Terry has
close
a
with
comment.
I've got a clarification from Andrew on a point, but then I'll stop.
You know, I've tried to learn as much as I can about this, and this is the thing, you know, from my perspective right now, is that to try to mediate the problems that's happening up that canyon, we have to get through phases 1 and phase 2 before we can even worry about phase 3. And to resolve the issue of phase 3, we very well may find that phase 1 and phase 2 help alleviate the problems, where maybe there's a whole nother idea, but we got to do phases 1 and 2. Now, the legislature has put forth, Terry, I believe $150 million to go towards phase 1. And to me, to sit here and argue this is kind of beyond the point. The point, I believe, should be the fact that, you know, this is what's been recommended or is what's come to us as Wasatch Front, and we have to make a decision on accepting the RTP, which includes a lot of things, not just the gondola. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there that we have to approve to get moving through the motion. And I believe the other thing I heard, I don't know if it was Andrew or Jory or Wayne, talk about the fact that this RTP has been being worked on for the past 3.5 years. Correct on that? And that realistically, there's been changes to the RTP that we've moved to this point right now to be able to do this. And we will start another process of another 3.5 years working on the next RTP. Am I correct on that? So to me, as far as the negative towards the gondola, it shouldn't be now. Right now, everyone should be going, yeah, we agree with phase 1 and we want that. It's been funded and we don't want to mess that up. And I think that as far as those who oppose the gondola, then during the next 4 years is when to try to start working on it if they want it pulled out of it at that point, because the recommendation could come back saying the gondola is not needed at this time or it's not part of the process. It depends upon what happens over the next coming 4 years. Am I correct on that?
Well, I mean, if what you're saying, and maybe Terry could help us with this, but if what you're saying is if phase 1 moves forward and is successful, and then that might demonstrate that the later phases are not needed.
That's
and
what
then
I'm
there
saying.
could be
Yes,
changes
yes.
made going forward.
So I don't know,
To the-
Terry, can
to
you
the
answer that
EIS, I
question?
know.
I may not answer the question directly. It's not on purpose. I just have this thought that I feel like I want to get out there. And the purpose of this group is to create a plan. And a plan is not the same thing as project delivery. And I think that the role of this group is to make sure that all the projects fit together, that they are financially constrained, that there's air conformity done to make sure that the whole plan works together. That's not the same thing as constructing a project, and that's a different skill set and that analysis takes place at a different location. This is a discussion that is very brief and not very deep in this group. And believe me, we have a team of people who have gone deep on the topic of the problems in Little Cottonwood Canyon. That's the place to talk about the issues with the solutions that come out of the EIS process is as part of the EIS process. This is a planning process. That is a project process. And I think we just need to respect there are different roles for the planning piece versus the project piece. And the project piece is really the place to talk about the details because they have gone deep. They have spent years trying to put fair information out there and solicit public comment. So to say that public comment that occurs for this body should encompass what we should do with Little Cottonwood Canyon isn't quite fair. The comments really should be related to the overall plan and how those projects fit together. The place for the discussion, I believe in the EIS process. I believe that it's designed to be fair and transparent and take into account public comment. And these are difficult issues, but I think that's the place for the discussion, not as part of the broader planning context.
Okay, Terry, thank you. Any other comments? I would like to turn to Mayor Snezinski. She's got a hand up. Would you like to share some thoughts with us, Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't go into a discussion about gondola pro or con. It's more about the process for me. So the reason I object to the gondola being included or phase 3 being included in the RTP is it's unsettled. It's not, we don't have the rods, so we've got a chicken and egg. And even that it's in the document, in the proposal, it's elicited so much. And now we're hearing there's not much we can do. People of Utah, we've got this process that kind of trumps our process. What is our role then as committee members? Are we rubber stamping, or are we providing a critical review and recommendations to how the planning evolves? So if we're just, rubber stamp, I don't want to derail the region's transportations. Nobody does. But we've got a situation here in Little Cottonwood Canyon where from the public comments, and I'm looking forward to being able to review them, 1,600. I hope I'll be able to get through them by the May meeting. But let's say it's similar to what we've received in the EIS, about almost 90% opposed, 10% pro. And definitely there's active groups on both sides. So we're probably not going to be hearing new revolutionary ideas, more of what's already stated. So you've got intense opposition on the public record at every phase. And we say, as a member of this body, there's nothing I can do. I have to approve it or risk derailing all my colleagues and the whole entire region's transportation projects. I don't, that's a Sophie's choice I don't want to have to make. And I want to work as a trusted member of this committee. But I also ask that others be sensitive. If you had a hugely unpopular, hugely expensive project that, would it impact a project in Davis County? I mean, if we didn't fund the gondola, presumably there'd be more money for projects north and south and west. But back to the process, we don't have the rod yet. So we're being asked to approve something where the EIS isn't even yet final. So what if the EIS comes out and says, actually, on final review, the gondola, we're just going to go to phase 1 and observe it more in a phasing process. And if these criteria are met, we will not advance to 2 or 3. Let's just say that hypothetically. Then we've already included it. We're ahead of the game. So that's troubling. And also, the stakes are even higher than for the EIS. I mean, the EIS process has to get it right because we're hearing in this body that we can't challenge the final recommendation or the decision making. We need to approve it as presented. But yet we are the electeds. We are the members of this body. We are the ones accountable. So the choice is approve it as a package deal, take it or leave it, over the objection of your constituents, over the objection, over the opportunity. There's just got to be a better way to create some language to say, we're good up to phase 1. Look, we all agree on phase 1. And I agree with the comments that chances are phase 1 could be enough. I mean, we're doing things already in Sandy that we're seeing light bulbs going on for long-term solutions based on what we're doing on a very micro level. If we can scale that, we've got progress. We just need to be working together. And I hate that this is kind of creating a division. So I just want to state, nobody here wants to derail the whole RTP. We have to come up with some elegant solution to put an asterisk by that phase 3 and say that this has never been endorsed by this body. We do not expect that this will fund it, but to the point of planning versus projects, once it's set in plan, it definitely accelerates the project status, and I think everybody here knows that.
Thanks for your input. And certainly there's a lot of good conversation, and next meeting we'll have an opportunity to flesh this. But Mayor Wilson, let me give you the last comment to this. Please share your thoughts.
Could I ask Andrew a question? There was a piece that you did not share and this idea of projects being delayed. Could you elaborate on that, what you truly think is at risk in terms of projects being delayed if we were to delist and move towards, and there's a name for that group that I don't have off the top of my head, when Federal Highway, EPA, the MPO, UDOT, UTA meet.
Yeah, you're referring to the interagency
Yeah.
consultation team, and just
My understanding is if there's a conflict, it would move to the governor.
that
at
there
that.
is a conflict resolution process that, you know, in the EPA regulations, yeah, and that's correct. So you're asking sort of a big question. I'm going to try to address it quickly, of what happens if there's a delay in approving the RTP, or there's projects that are taken out of the RTP that are regionally significant, and that causes us to not be able to get the RTP approved. Then, just in short summary, that means that we're frozen at the current RTP, and all of the changes that have been developed over the course of the last few years collectively across the region would not be made to the RTP unless and until there is a final RTP that's adopted and approved. So that's the short answer to that.
And then what, but our final arbitrator, as I understand it, is the governor.
There, if there's a dispute over the air quality conformity, then under the federal regulations, that dispute goes to the governor for resolution.
So that would
And
not
then-
relate to he wouldn't have the authority over the delisting perhaps, and the lack of conformity between the EIS and
In the case of a conflict in the air quality conformity process, if there is a conflict, then that would go to the governor, and unless the governor signs off, then we would not, then the federal approval and conformity finding for the plan could not be given. So then, in other words, we could be in a position that unless and until we include the regionally significant project or projects in our plan, that the plan could not be approved and would not move forward.
Okay. So as a wrap up, and I think this conversation was really healthy, and I want everyone to know that this is something, I mean, we're all those of us working in local government, used to having robust conversations. So I honor everyone at the table. I think I do agree with Terry and with Dave and others saying that, you know, this is well, let me say it differently. This is a situation where we are in the RTP, as I understand it, is the core sort of holding of our vision. It is a statement of our vision. And that is really what I have a moral kind of personal conflict with, is that when there are people in this room that are undecided. There are people that like the gondola, people like I have adamantly opposed. For those who are on the fence, what you'll be doing by supporting the listing and moving forward is having a project listed in a visioning document that is, as it reads in your document, the RTP is a long-term strategy for our future development. Will be listed as part of our strategy. And I think that is fundamentally what concerns me. We will be saying as a body, this is our vision, this is our strategy, this is our plan. Thus, you know, and what Andrew's saying, and I think Terry's agreeing with, and Highway Administration, we have no choice. So that's why I use the term, we're being held hostage. We don't get to weigh in on this as it relates to whether or not we like it or not. We're not taking that vote. The vote we're taking is, oh, we have to do this. So we're just going to do this. So that is my concern, in that I have a moral objection, given my strong opposition, having studied this for years now, And the vast majority of residents stepping up and saying no. To list it as a part of our strategic plan, in our transportation plan, as a long-term strategy. It's there, regardless of the funding, when it might, that's where I would hope that between now and May, we can take it a step further and see if there's a dispute resolution that could occur. I don't think I agree with Jeff Silverstream saying that we're all wanting to kill the gondola here. That is not the point. What I'm unwilling to do is put my name on a vision for our future that includes a project of that magnitude, that cost. And by the way, it's running the math, the capital cost alone is $300 per person. So if your residents aren't using it, that's family of four, over $1,000 to pay for this, stopping at 2 resorts. That's a problem for me to put my name on a document. So it's hard for me. I get it's complex. I would wonder if there isn't another way that we could, because what I do hear, and I believe strongly, we are engaged around phase 1. Thank you, Mayor Soltansky, for taking action in your community to deal with the trouble this winter, because it's been big. It's real. And we all want to invest right now to solve solutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. With that, I'd like to move ahead. Obviously, I think if nothing else, if you would, as committee members, please get educated. This is important, and understand the nuances associated with this, because as I stated earlier, the Regional Growth Committee needs to make a recommendation going forward to the Regional Council, the Wasatch Regional Council. And to be honest with you, we will take this issue up in our next meeting. So thank you. Let's go ahead and move to number 6. Great comments on number 5. This is information on your Transportation Land Use Connection Program, the new 2023. And Megan, I think you're going to help us with this. Thank you.
Here I am, Mayor. Thank you. I want to look to Andrew and Ted a little on this, but this is the March RGC meeting is my favorite one, because that's where we announce the TLC awards, the Transportation and Land Use Connection Awards. These are planning projects that you and your cities are, it's in your best interest, and you apply to the TLC program to get these awards, and we're really excited about them. Ted, is it okay if I just list the awards and then maybe we send project descriptions afterward? Okay. But I don't want to downplay the importance of this, because it really is so exciting. So our Transportation and Land Use Connection Program made 13 awards this year. The Regional Growth Committee is the first to hear them. We're grateful to our partners, UDOT, UTA, and Salt Lake County for your help reviewing these projects, as well as funding contributions to these projects and seeing them through to fruition as they go forth and produce deliverables. We made over $2 million in awards this year. You may recall a contribution from the Intermountain Healthcare donation that they made to our TLC program. That's kind of programmed alongside these dollars. And there's a little asterisk on those projects that were funded in part by IHC. So we're grateful to them. It expanded our funding ability this year a little bit. 13 awards, and as well as 2 regional WFRC-led efforts that will contribute to TLC work going forward. I'm just going to list them quickly, and we'll send those project descriptions out to you. The first is the Cottonwood Heights Town Center Master Plan and Canal Study. So kind of be 2 separate projects, but both important to Cottonwood Heights. This was funded in part by IHC. Brighton Neighborhood Nodes Design Plan. The Salt Lake City North Temple Economic Revitalization Plan. The Perry Highway 89 Master Plan. The Morgan City Downtown Plan and Design Standards, as well as a Parks and Trails Plan, kind of integrated. Draper River to Range Corridor Study, looking from the Wasatch to the Jordan River and the Point for active transportation. Midvale Master Transportation Plan. The Mill Creek Master Trail and Sidewalk Implementation Plan. South Jordan Shields Lane Solutions Development Study. The West Jordan Safe Street Study and Implementation Plan. And the Davis County Active Transportation Plan, countywide AT plan. A holiday general plan update with some neat data visualization, innovative strategies. Layton Long Range Economic Development Plan. Okay, and then this is our TLC map, and you can always go look at this map at previous projects. You can see deliverables there, and you can see our new projects. We'll link to our awarded projects page and send project descriptions along. Seriously, thank you all for applying to the program, and we love working with your cities on these, and we're, as always, pleased as punch by the projects this year.
Okay, Megan, hey, that's wonderful news. I'm hoping everyone who witnessed that understands what's coming and some great opportunities. Any comments or question to Megan relative to what's been proposed, what's been presented? Okay, we appreciate that. Obviously, that was item number 6. We do have an action plan or an action discussion dealing with stationary planning. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but I will indicate to you for Royce City, and I speak for Royce City, I'm excited about this program and getting this program done. And so if you don't mind, Megan, would you continue then, and let's talk about this action item dealing with the stationary planning.
Thank you, Mayor. If you'd advance slide on the same PowerPoint deck. Not that one. Just don't click that piece. Sweet, thank you. Okay, thanks, Mayor. So stationary planning update. We have a very brief update for you, and then we do have an action item. As you know, HB 462 from 2022 required cities to plan around their fixed rail and BRT station areas. I'll remind you of the objectives of that in a moment, but this year, Senate Bill 27 made a small but impactful change to these requirements. And today, I'll give you an update on how we need to change our station area plan certification policy in order to comply with that. It's a small change. It has a huge impact. Let's take a look. So really quick update. You'll see that this number has changed from 88 to 91 station areas. That's because we are now including the Taylorsville BRT, which is funded. And I'll announce an award for Taylorsville to plan around those station areas as well. So Taylorsville will be doing a station area plan around 3 of their 3 BRT stations, the Mid-Valley Connector. And we have our 2 certified plans. We have funded 40 out of 91 station areas with the technical assistance in partnership with UTA and GOEO, as well as Mountain Land Association of Governments. So we are moving forward on this. Things are happening. Some really great station area plans. 2 awards have been made since we last met with this committee. Those include the West Jordan Track Station, the 5600 West Old Bingham Highway Station Area Plan, and this Taylorsville BRT Station Plan for the 1300 West, Atherton West, and Riverboat Road stations for Taylorsville BRT. So we'll be kicking those projects off here shortly, moving ahead with those cities. Okay, now, the change that Senate Bill 27 made is in regard to prior actions taken by the city. So this is the action item for today, where in 2022, we recognized that planning that cities have already done is very important and should be included and count toward these station area planning requirements. We tied the prior action review to the key elements of the vision, the map, the stakeholder engagement, the implementation strategies. And while those things are all very important, cities may not have planned in that exact rigid format, but they may still be making really great progress toward these station area plan goals based on the work that they've already done. And that work can include plans, adopted plans, ordinances, approved land use applications, approved agreements or financing like a CRA, or investments made, including maybe development. And so now the way that prior actions will be measured is if they are substantially promoting these 4 station area plan goals, all 4. So increasing the availability and affordability of housing, promoting sustainable environmental conditions, enhancing access to opportunities, and increasing transportation choices and connections. So cities can demonstrate that their prior actions are substantially promoting those and are still relevant to promoting those. So maybe 10 years ago, something great happened. There's more planning to be done, right? So we'll be looking for that in review of prior actions that occurred before June 1, 2022. And in order to do that review as staff, we'd like to make a change to our policy. So this is in your packets. It's a 2-page document. It's our Wasatch Front Regional Council Station Area Plan Certification Policy. And the change is 2B. And the change is just referring right back to those Senate Bill 27 changes. It states that prior actions will be reviewed according to those changes, and we'll look at the station area plan objectives being substantially promoted in a way that is still relevant to review those. So I'll if there aren't any questions, maybe are there any questions?
Do we have any questions, committee? Please comment.
Thanks, Mayor. I really just wanted to say how incredibly valuable I think it is to be strategic when we're looking at not just our rail stations, our future rail stations, everything that we are investing in. We all recognize how geographically constrained we are. And if we can look at areas to really focus on strategic density and strategic development, not only at that local acreage at that particular station, but also as you connect to it, I think that this is going to continue to evolve and continue to add value to our communities as we move forward. And I just want to thank everyone involved in all of the efforts on this. So appreciate that.
Great comment, Beth. I appreciate that. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, then if you don't mind, I'd like to make a motion then that we approve the changes to the stationary plan certification policy as provided. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second. Mayor Soltansky.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay.
can I make a
Do
clarification?
any other questions or comments or discussions?
Just for the clarity of the motion, this is to recommend that council approve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just minutes.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a recommendation to carry to the council for final approval. Okay, so let me go back. Do I have a motion then to approve the recommendations as a recommendation to the council?
So moved.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, do I have a second?
Yes. Mayor
Thank you.
Soltansky.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, any other further conversation or discussion? Hearing none, do all those approve, say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Hearing none, okay, that action's approved. We'll make the recommendation forward to the council. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. We do have a couple of things we want to close with if we can. There is a requirement, as you may be aware of, associated with the Utah Open Public Meetings Act. I will indicate to you, we all have done this, we do this, but we are also obligated as a public entity to provide that. And so the Wasatch Regional Council makes a practice to follow that rule. Before we jump into that, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, before we start the video, it's only 8 minutes, so if you've not gone through this, please do. That some of you may have already gone this. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have a motion then and a second to adjourn shortly after the end of the video. So with that, do I have a motion to effectively adjourn after the video?
So moved.
Well, thank you, Beth. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. I heard a second there.
Commissioner Bolos.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I want to make sure we get a majority. Okay. Any opposed? Okay, effectively, right after the video, we'll go ahead and close this meeting. With that, please sit and listen to the important parts of the Open and Meeting Act.
So what's the Open and Public Meetings Act? It's the state law that ensures government actions and deliberations are openly conducted. Before we continue, keep in mind that this video is an overview, and exceptions may exist based on your entity type. So what's considered an open and public meeting? It's when a governing body majority meets to discuss or act upon government business. It includes the meetings sometimes referred to as workshops or executive sessions. Regular meetings, public hearings, electronic meetings, and emergency meetings are all open and public meetings. Open and public meetings don't include chance or social meetings. A public hearing is a type of open and public meeting where citizens have a reasonable opportunity to speak. Public hearings happen when a government adopts a budget or imposes or increases taxes or fees. An electronic meeting is a type of open and public meeting that's convened electronically, such as via phone or the internet. Remember, the governing body must adopt a resolution, rule, or ordinance allowing and governing electronic meetings. An open and public meeting may be closed to discuss any of the following: a person's character, competence, or health, security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, collective bargaining, litigation, purchase, sale, or lease of property if an open discussion would prevent the entity from completing the transaction on the best terms, investigations of criminal misconduct, and private or protected information per the Utah Procurement Code, including trade secrets. 2/3 of the governing body need to vote yes to close a meeting. Quick math lesson. 2 divided by 3 equals 66.7%. Let's say your governing body has 5 members. If 3 out of the 5 members vote yes, that equals 60%, which is not equal to or greater than 66.7%, which means you're 1 member short and instead need 4 out of 5 members to vote yes. During a closed meeting, a governing body can't interview someone applying to fill an elected position, discuss filling a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, discuss the character, competence, or health of a person whose name was submitted for consideration to fill a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, or approve any ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment. If a closed meeting is discussing a person's character, competence, or health, or security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, no recording or minutes are required. However, the presiding member needs to sign a sworn written statement stating such. If the closed meeting is held for any other reason, a recording must be made. Emergency meetings may be held to discuss an urgent matter due to unforeseen circumstances. In order to hold the meeting, the best notice that's feasible is provided of the time, location, and topics to be considered. An attempt is made to contact all governing body members, and the governing body majority approves the meeting. Entities that hold regular meetings need to provide notice at least annually of the year's meeting schedule. As always, the notice must include date, time, and place. For entities that don't hold regularly scheduled regular meetings, 24 hours notice must be provided. All meetings, whether regularly scheduled in advance over the course of the year or scheduled as needed, must provide no less than 24 hours notice of meeting agendas. If a public hearing is held, public notice requirements change. Make sure to distinguish between regular meeting notice requirements and public hearing notice requirements. For regular meetings, an entity is only required to notify a newspaper and doesn't need to pay to publish a notice. For public hearings, notice must be published in at least one issue of a newspaper. If a newspaper of general circulation isn't available, written notice is posted in 3 public places within the entity's boundaries. Regular meetings require 24 hours notice. Public hearings require 7 days notice. For both regular meetings and public hearings, written notice must be posted at the principal office of the governing body, or, if no such office exists, at the building where the meeting will be held. Governing bodies must also provide notice of open and public meetings on the Public Notice website at publicnotice.utah.gov. By posting on the website and providing the email of the local newspaper, governing bodies can also meet the requirement to notify a newspaper. However, other requirements such as publishing in a newspaper still apply. Typically, posting on the Public Notice website is done by the records officer, recorder, or clerk. However, it's the governing body's responsibility to ensure notice is provided. State Archives has prepared a training manual and quick guide for owners and posters, as well as training videos that can be accessed at their website at archives.utah.gov. If your entity is increasing a fee or undergoing truth and taxation for a property tax increase, be aware that there are additional notice and posting requirements. Public meeting agendas need to include reasonably specified topics to be considered, with each topic listed under a separate agenda item on the meeting agenda. The governing body may not consider a topic in an open meeting that wasn't on the agenda. If a new topic not on the agenda is raised by the public during an open meeting, the governing body may discuss the topic. However, final action may not be taken on the new topic during that meeting. Meeting minutes and an audio recording are required for all open meetings, with limited exceptions. When an open or closed meeting is required to be recorded, it must be unedited and contain all the portions of the meeting. Recordings of open meetings must be made available within 3 days. Every entity needs to establish procedures for the governing body's approval of minutes. Pending minutes are written minutes prepared in draft form and are subject to change before being approved by the governing body. Pending minutes must contain a clear indication such as a draft or pending watermark, that the governing body hasn't yet approved the minutes and that they're subject to change. Pending minutes must be made available within 30 days. Approved minutes are written minutes of a meeting that have been approved by the governing body. Approved minutes are the official record of the meeting and must be made available within 3 business days. Whoever is responsible for taking the minutes during meetings, typically the records officer, recorder, or clerk, needs to be familiar with what OPMA requires be contained in the minutes. When a governing body closes a meeting, the following must be publicly announced and entered into the minutes of the open meeting at which the closed meeting was approved. The reason or reasons for holding the closed meeting, the location where the closed meeting will be held, and the vote of each member of the governing body either for or against the motion to close the meeting. The recording and any minutes must include the date, time, and location of the meeting, the names of the governing body members present and absent, and the names of all others present except where disclosure would infringe on the confidentiality necessary to fulfill the original purpose of closing the meeting. For more information, access our local government resource center at resources.auditor.utah.gov.